On behalf of Major General Claire Gill, Commanding General, United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence, welcome to the Fort Rucker Quarterly Retirement Ceremony. We are gathered here today to honor those individuals and families who have earned special recognition and served our country with distinction. It is our privilege to welcome our retirees and their families who are being honored today. Joining us from the Aviation Center of Excellence Command Team are Chief Warrant Officer 5 and Mrs. Slider, Chief Warrant Officer of the Aviation Branch, and Command Sergeant Major Ruben Davila, Command Sergeant Major of the Aviation Branch. Please rise for the invocation given by Captain Kenneth Brooks, 164th Theater Airfield Operations Group Brigade Chaplain, and remain standing for the playing of our national anthem.
Soldiers who have served our nation with courage and unwavering dedication. Today they stand at the threshold of a new season, preparing to hang up their uniforms for the final time. Their departure causes us to reflect on the profound journey of service. We're deeply grateful, Lord, for the passion, the integrity, the high standards they set, giving us all goals which to aspire. Grateful for the unbreakable bonds of camaraderie forged in times of challenge and peace, for the fellow soldiers, battle buddies, leaders who have been our companions, mentors, and our strength. Also grateful for the families, the spouses, children, the parents who stood alongside them, sharing their sacrifices, enduring long deployments, and offering loving support that made this life of service possible. We thank you for the privilege of meaningful work, for the skills and energy to perform our duties, and for the high calling of this great nation to serve the cause of peace and freedom through strength and preparedness. Thank you for the constant presence, Lord, guiding us and protecting us even when we were unaware. And as we gather today, Father, grace this ceremony with the warmth of shared memories, honest reflection on careers of selfless service, unified hope for the future. Bless the conversations and laughter that fills this room. And as the brave soldiers step into the next chapter of their lives, we ask that you would grant them abundant peace, good health, and new purpose. May the skills and leaderships they have gained in service to the country continue to be a blessing to their communities and to all they do. Watch over them and their families always. We ask this in your holy and mighty name. Amen.
Please be seated. It is my pleasure to introduce our host for today's ceremony, Colonel Jeffrey Paulus, Garrison Commander, Fort Rucker.
Distinguished guests, family, friends, and honorees, good afternoon. You know, as I thought about how to address this group of warriors and professionals, it struck me that there's over 250 years, 2.5 centuries of military experience that we're here to honor. Collectively, over 30 combat tours, 40 different duty locations, and 100 PCSs. It's an incredible amount of leadership that the Army is bidding farewell to today. There's a saying, if you're going to live, leave a legacy. Make a mark on the world that can't be erased. Today, we are in the presence of Americans who have done just that. Because while you are leaving military service, it is the legacy of the soldiers, officers, aviators, and Army civilians that you have led, bled with, and supported that will endure. In some cases, that legacy endures through those that you have convinced to continue to serve. In some cases, that legacy endures because of the soldiers whose lives you've saved. In every case, that legacy endures through the thousands of soldiers and civilians who are better because of your leadership. As we look at the room, senior non-commissioned officers, the steel in the spine of this Army, you who have turned green kids into soldiers and held your units together during some of the most difficult times any of us have known. Army civilian professionals, you who have provided leadership, stability, and continuity during both war and peace. All of you entered the Army as it was fighting one kind of war, in the dust and the heat, and the mountains against a shadowy foe. You have sacrificed for it. You have bled for it. But you didn't just fight that war. You've built the Army that will fight the next one. You've taken the hard-won lessons, the blood-soaked experience, and used it to forge the future. You've looked ahead to new battlefields, to new technologies, and to the new face of our enemy, and you have ensured that the soldiers who followed are ready. And because of your grit, because of your foresight, this nation's greatest treasure, our sons and daughters, are not soft. They are not unprepared. They are wedded, hardened, and ready to meet whatever comes next. So to those of you retiring, know this: you are not shuffling off into the quiet life. You are marching into the pages of history. The standards you have set, the soldiers you have molded, the very character you have imprinted upon this Army, that is your immortal legacy. You have earned your rest with sweat, with toil, and with unwavering devotion to this country. But your service is not over. It has simply entered a new phase. You are now deployed to the towns and cities of this great nation, and they are in desperate need of leaders with your mettle. I challenge you, do not go quietly into a life of ease. Be the neighbor who organizes, the citizen who speaks with conviction, the pillar of your community who does not bend when a hard wind blows. By your every action, you will remind your countrymen of the caliber of men and women who have dedicated their lives in service to the United States Army. Let your conduct be a constant testament to a life of honor. Do not ever let them forget what a warrior looks like. However, none of you were able to do this alone. Your families have served and sacrificed right along with you. Every soldier knows that the toughest battles are sometimes fought at home. And honestly, being the spouse of a soldier is the hardest job in the Army. So to the families gathered here, please know your sacrifice and your strength are a part of every victory this Army has ever won. Never forget that, because your duty is not done either. Continue to hold your warrior to that unending standard. And when others look for an example of strength, point to yourself and tell them, I held the line. All of you, retirees and family, were asked to live a life of consequence, and you have. You have left your mark, a brand burned into the soul of this Army that time will never erase. Thank you. As someone whose service has not yet ended, I know that our beloved Army is better because of you. Above the best, fly Army, this will defend.
Colonel Paulus will now present the awards. He will be assisted by Command Sergeant Major Michael Castro, Garrison Command Sergeant Major. Each retiree will receive their retirement award, a certificate of retirement, and an American flag. Military retirees will also receive a certificate of appreciation for their service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, signed by the Commander-in-Chief. All spouses will receive a certificate of appreciation and a rose or a coin. Roses and coins are provided by the Wiregrass Area Sergeants Major Association. Please feel free to take pictures at any time during the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, Command Sergeant Major Caprina Rivers and Mr. Anthony Rivers. Command Sergeant Major Caprina Rivers enlisted in the Army December 2003. She completed basic combat training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and advanced individual training at Fort Rucker, Alabama, where she graduated as a 15 Papa Flight Operations Specialist. During her 22 years of military service, she served at numerous duty assignments to include Camp Page, South Korea, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Fort Riley, Kansas, United States Military Academy, West Point, New York, Camp Humphreys, South Korea, Fort Stewart, Georgia, Hunter Army Airfield, Georgia, the NCO Leadership Center of Excellence, Sergeant Major's Academy, Fort Bliss, Texas, Camp Humphreys, South Korea, and Fort Wainwright, Alaska. She has a total of 29 months served in combat and operational tours in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Her various leadership positions include Flight Operations Sergeant, Aviation Operations Sergeant, Brigade Operations NCO, Advanced Individual Training Platoon Sergeant, Joint Operations Center NCOIC, Assistant Aviation Operations Sergeant, Senior Aviation Operations Sergeant, Tactical NCO, First Sergeant, Class 73 graduate of the Sergeant Major's Academy, Aviation Operation Chief, and Command Sergeant Major. Command Sergeant Major Rivers stated, "The highlight of her career was servant leadership for exceptional soldiers I worked with in my career by providing purpose, direction, and motivation to accomplish the mission and improve the organization, inspiring soldiers to be more than they ever thought they could be." She is happily married to Anthony Rivers of Tallahassee, Florida. They have one son, Josiah Rivers, and upon retirement, they will reside in McDonough, Georgia. By direction of the President of the United States, Command Sergeant Major Rivers is receiving the Legion of Merit in recognition of 22 years of outstanding military service, culminating as the Command Sergeant Major for 1st Battalion, 25th Aviation Regiment, Fort Wainwright, Alaska. Mr. Rivers is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a coin. Will the family and invited guests of Command Sergeant Major Rivers please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Command Sergeant Major Caprina Rivers. Ladies and gentlemen, First Sergeant Robert Lee Ballard and Mrs. Kristen Ballard. First Sergeant Robert Lee Ballard enlisted in the Army in 1998, completed basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and advanced individual training as a 15 Papa Aviation Operations Specialist at Fort Rucker, Alabama. During his 26 years of service, he served in numerous duty assignments as First Sergeant with Bravo Company, 1st and the 13th Aviation Regiment, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Air Operations Committee Chief, 1st and the 13th Aviation Regiment, Fort Rucker, Alabama, HHC First Sergeant with 1st and the 25th Attack Recon Battalion, Fort Wainwright, Alaska, Aviation Operations Sergeant with the Army Aviation Brigade, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, Senior Aviation Operations Sergeant with HHT 66 Cavalry Regiment, Fort Drum, New York, Training Management NCOIC with Delta Company, 1st and the 13th Aviation Regiment, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Aviation Operations Sergeant with Headquarters and Headquarters Troop, 16 Cavalry Regiment, Fort Riley, Kansas, Aviation Operations Sergeant with Headquarters and Headquarters Troop, 16 Cavalry Regiment, Fort Carson, Colorado, DES Operations Sergeant with Alpha Company, 1st and the 210th Garrison Command, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Aviation Operations Specialist with 1st and the 25th Aviation Regiment, Wheeler Army Airfield, Hawaii. He deployed to Bosnia in 2002 in support of Operation Joint Forge, 2 tours in support of Iraqi freedom and Operation New Dawn, and 1 Republic of Korea rotation. First Sergeant Ballard has an associate's and bachelor's degree of science in aeronautics with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He is happily married to Mrs. Kristen Ballard and has 3 sons, Captain Calvin Ballard, Seth Ballard, and Jacob Spencer. Upon retirement, they will reside in Enterprise, Alabama. By direction of the President of the United States, First Sergeant Ballard is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 26 years of outstanding military service, culminating as Headquarters Department of the Army Senior Aviation Operations Sergeant, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Ballard is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of First Sergeant Ballard please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, First Sergeant Robert Lee Ballard. Ladies and gentlemen, Master Sergeant Roman Harrell and Mrs. Ashley Harrell. Master Sergeant Roman Harrell entered military service on 25 May 2001. During more than 25 years of honorable military service, he served in 4 military occupational specialties: infantryman, aviation operations specialist, Army recruiter, and talent acquisition specialist. His assignments included Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, Fort Polk, Louisiana, Fort Rucker, Alabama, and numerous recruiting assignments. His deployments include 2 combat tours in support of Iraqi freedom and Operation New Dawn. His various leadership positions include Operations Sergeant Major, Battalion Recruiting Operations NCOIC, First Sergeant, Station Commander, S3 NCOIC, and Airfield Operations NCOIC. Master Sergeant Harrell considers the highlight of his career to be the opportunity to lead, mentor, and develop soldiers while serving alongside the outstanding men and women of the United States Army. He is happily married to his beautiful wife, Ashley, whose unwavering love and support have been instrumental to his success throughout his Army career. Upon retirement, they look forward to spending more time with family and enjoying the next chapter of life. He retires with gratitude for the privilege of serving the nation and the soldiers of the United States Army. By direction of the President of the United States, Master Sergeant Harrell is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 25 years of outstanding military service, culminating as the Operations NCOIC of the United States Army Montgomery Recruiting Battalion, Montgomery, Alabama. Mrs. Harrell is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Master Sergeant Harrell please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Master Sergeant Roman Harrell. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Luis Christian Oropeza and Mrs. Shavon Oropeza. Sergeant First Class Luis Christian Oropeza enlisted in the Army in July of 2002 in Brooklyn, New York as a field artillery cannon crew member. During his 24 years of military service, he served in assignments to include Fort Sill, Oklahoma, 101st Airborne Division, Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 2nd Stryker Cavalry Regiment in Vilsec, 82nd Airborne Division, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 25th Infantry Division, Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, and 7th Special Forces Group, Camp Bull Simmons, Florida. His combat deployments include 3 tours supporting Operation Iraqi Freedom and 2 tours supporting Operation Enduring Freedom. Additional deployments with various Special Forces units, including tours in the Caribbean, Central America, Southern Cone, and the Andean Ridge areas. His versatility solidified lifelong alliances in support of Army initiatives worldwide. Leadership positions include artillery gunner, assistant team chief, howitzer team chief, human collection team sergeant, multifunction team leader, senior instructor writer, chief intelligence sergeant, and senior strategic debriefer. The highlight of his career was being selected to dedicated 6 senior NCO team to build the Army recruiting video for the Human Intelligence Collection Course and being recognized by the Guatemalan Interior Defense Minister for his contributions in supporting American and Guatemalan Special Forces. His dedication to duty is only possible by the steadfast support of his family and children. He is happily married to his lovely wife, Mrs. Shavon LaShawn Oropeza of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They have 4 children, Aaron Jr., Sophia, Amelia, and Malia. Upon retirement, they will reside in Shalimar, Florida, where Sergeant First Class Oropeza will transition into a Homeland Security role. By the direction of the President of the United States, Sergeant First Class Oropeza is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 24 years of outstanding military service, culminating as the Senior Strategic Debriefer for 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group, Camp Bull Simmons, Florida. Mrs. Oropeza is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Sergeant First Class Oropeza please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Louise Christian Oropeza. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Roseanda Evans. Sergeant First Class Roseanda Evans enlisted into the Army Delayed Entry Program 9 August 2002 and entered military service on 3 January 2003 at Fort Jackson, South Carolina as an aviation operations specialist. During her 23 years of military service, she served at numerous duty assignments to include Hunter Army Airfield, Georgia, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Camp Humphreys, South Korea, and Fort Bliss, Texas. Her deployments include Operations Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, and Iraqi Freedom, Operation Atlantic Resolve, Poland. Her various leadership positions include G3 Air Sergeant Major, Senior Aviation Detachment NCOIC, Battalion Operations NCOIC, Company First Sergeant, Senior Instructor, Platoon Flight Operations NCOIC, AIT Operations NCOIC, Victim Advocate, and Doctrine Developer DTAC Operations NCOIC. Sergeant First Class Evans stated the highlight of her career was working with exceptional soldiers throughout her career, and upon retirement, she plans to reside in Enterprise, Alabama. By direction of the President of the United States, Sergeant First Class Evans is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 23 years of outstanding military service, culminating as Operations NCOIC DTAC, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Will the family and invited guests of Sergeant First Class Evans please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Roseanda Evans. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Pisith Vunn and Tanya L. Thompson Vunn. Sergeant First Class Pisith Vunn enlisted into the United States Army in June 2003 and attended basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky in January of 2004. Upon completion of basic training, he attended advanced individual training for air traffic control specialist here at Fort Rucker, Alabama in April of 2004. During his 22 years of military service, he served at numerous duty assignments to include Grafenwehr, Germany, Fort Rucker, Alabama, Camp Humphreys, South Korea, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Fort Hood, Texas. His deployments include Operation Spartan Shield. His various leadership positions include shift leader, training supervisor, facility chief, equipment training NCOIC, airspace NCOIC, Adam BAE NCOIC, brigade unit movement officer NCOIC, TOC NCOIC, and 8th Army G3 Aviation Sergeant Major. Sergeant First Class Vunn stated the highlight of his career was working with exceptional soldiers of domestic and allied nations throughout his career. He is happily married to Tanya Lynn Thompson Vunn of Panama City, Florida. They have 2 children, John Carlo Leighton Vunn and Annabella Amore Pauline Vunn. Upon retirement, they plan to reside in Florida. By direction of the President of the United States, Sergeant First Class Vunn is receiving the Army Commendation Medal in recognition of 22 years of outstanding military service, culminating as the Alpha Company 1st and 11th Aviation Regiment Ops NCO, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Vunn is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Sergeant First Class Vunn please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Pisith Vunn. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Bernard J. Battle. Sergeant First Class Bernard J. Battle, Jr., enlisted in July 2004 and entered military service on 20 October 2004 at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He graduated from Advanced Individual Training as a 15 Papa Aviation Operations Specialist. During his 22 years of military service, he served at numerous duty assignments to include Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Soto Cano Air Force Base, Honduras, Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Drum, New York, and Fort Rucker, Alabama. His deployments include Operations Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, and Operation Atlantic Resolve. His awards include 7 Army Commendation Medals, 6 Army Achievement Medals, 7 Army Good Conduct Medals, and the Master Aviation Badge. He stated the highlight of his career was being able to coach, train, and mentor soldiers and give back to the United States Army by training future 15 Papas at Yano Hall. He has one truly amazing child, Isaiah, and upon retirement, he plans to reside in Enterprise, Alabama. By direction of the President of the United States, Sergeant First Class Battle is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 22 years of outstanding military service, culminating as Aviation Operations Specialist Instructor, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Will the family and invited guests of Sergeant First Class Battle please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant First Class Bernard J. Battle. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Victor A. Estes and Mrs. Teresa Estes. Mr. Estes entered federal civilian service in March 2009 with the United States Army Aeromedical Research Laboratory Research Support Branch as a biomedical research engineering technician at Fort Rucker, Alabama, while also participating as an active U.S. Army reservist. During his combined 30 years of federal civilian and military service, he served in multiple positions, which include 76 Yankee Supply Specialist, 67 Bravo Field Medical Assistant, 67 Juliet Medical Evacuation and Maintenance Test Pilot, Detachment Commander, Research Aviator, 70 Hotel Medical Operations Officer, biomedical research engineering technician, and fabrications and 3D prototyping team lead. As a Department of the Army civilian at the U.S. Army Aeromedical Research Laboratory, over the last 17 years, Mr. Estes has designed and fabricated over 2,300 research equipment projects that enabled USAREL's exceptional civilian and military research personnel to effectively support ongoing aviation crash analysis, human factors analysis, aviator helmet design, medical equipment, military special testing and design, and aviator pilot performance research and testing. Mr. Estes also participated as a Gaines in the education of mathematics and science guest lecturer to middle and high school students. Mr. Estes stated the highlight of his career was receiving the Quad A Honorable Order of St. Michael Bronze Award and the Order of Military Medical Merit Bronze Award in 2022. In addition, being awarded a U.S. patent in 2025 for medical research equipment that he helped design and fabricate. He is married to Teresa L. Estes of Ulysses, Kansas, and upon retirement plans to reside in Level Plains, Alabama. By order of the President of the United States, Mr. Estes is receiving the Meritorious Civilian Service Medal in recognition of 30 years of civilian service, culminating as fabrication and 3D prototyping team lead in the Research Operations Group, United States Army Aeromedical Research Laboratory, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Estes is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Mr. Estes please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Victor A. Estes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daniel J. Stamaris, Jr. and Mrs. Heather Stamaris. Mr. Stamaris served from June 2001 through December 2025 with the AMCOM Combined Logistics Command as a Quality Assurance Specialist. During his 24-plus years of service, he served concurrently in several positions, to include Quality Assurance Specialist, Publications Officer, and Depot Repair Authorization Analysis, providing contract oversight for aviation maintenance at Fort Rucker, Alabama. From the inception of his tenure, he initiated and completed the conversion of handwritten logs to digital databases. This enabled more accurate tracking and analysis of aircraft maintenance data. This data is reported to the Department of the Army and utilized by the local command. Through Mr. Stamaris' diligence, These depot repair authorizations accumulated in a cost avoidance average of $25 million per year for the 24 years of his service. He also conducted regular briefings at Fort Rucker's Survival, Aviation, Resistance, and Escape, or SEER, school. Mr. Stamaris stated the highlights of his career were receiving the 2011 Ernest A. Young Logistics Achievement Award, 2011 Fort Rucker Outstanding Civilian Employee of the Year with a Disability, and the Honorable Order of St. Michael in 2025. In May of 2015, he crewed a UH-60 on what was titled Final Flight for the first time since being shot down in 1991. He will always remember his time working with exceptional civilians and military personnel at Fort Rucker. He is married to the former Heather Lawrence of Headland, Alabama. Upon retirement, he plans to reside in Headland and continue to brief SEER students, assist with local charity organizations, and travel. By direction of the President of the United States, Mr. Stamaris is receiving the Meritorious Civilian Service Medal in recognition of 24 years of civilian service at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Stamaris is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Mr. Stamaris please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daniel J. Stamaris, Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Donald R. Choate and Mrs. Claire Choate. Mr. Choate entered the U.S. Army in 1976 and completed nearly 30 years of distinguished service, retiring as a Chief Warrant Officer 4. A Master Army aviator, he flew the UH-1, Hueys, and UH-60 Blackhawks, accumulating more than 3,000 flight hours and culminating his uniformed career as the Aviation Chief of Academics. Following his military retirement, Mr. Choate continued serving the Army as a battle command instructor, later supporting C-cell fielding for personnel recovery, deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Qatar, then ultimately joining the Medical Evacuations Capabilities Division, and in 2020 became a MECD Capability Development and Integration Specialist. Throughout his tenure, he ensured medevac capabilities were rigorously planned, properly resourced, and aligned with the Title X, the Geneva Conventions, DoD directives, and Army doctrine. He developed a comprehensive assessment framework to analyze operational requirements, identify capability gaps, and refine planning processes in collaboration with key stakeholders. Mr. Choate also led the CASEVAC experiment integrating the UH-60 Blackhawk alias a program to develop the optionally piloted aircraft capability, enabling to operate with reduced crew or fully autonomously for future high-risk logistics and CASEVAC missions. One of his most meaningful accomplishments was securing a UH-60 Lima for permanent display at Fort Rucker to support medevac development and heritage. As the highlight of his remarkable 50-year career with the Army, Mr. Choate considers the privilege of serving alongside exceptional civilian and military professionals to be his greatest honor. Upon retirement, he and his wife Claire plan to reside in Level Plains, Alabama. By direction of the President of the United States, Mr. Choate is receiving the Meritorious Service Medal in recognition of 50 years of federal service, culminating as a Capability Development and Integration Specialist in Medical Evacuation Concepts and Capabilities Division, Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Choate is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of the Choate family please come forward?
We can get out of the way far enough. Gotta get skinny. Get comfortable with each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Donald R. Choate. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Parsons and Mrs. Patricia Parsons. Mr. Parsons entered federal civilian service on 9 June 2008 with the Fort Rucker U.S. Army Garrison's Plans, Analysis, and Integration Office, and later, on 30 August 2009, accepted the Plans and Operations Specialist position in AVCO G3. He was promoted to the Chief of Current Operations on 9 September 2010 and served in that capacity throughout the remainder of his civilian career. During his 18 years of federal civilian service, he supported all Fort Rucker units as part of the Crisis Management Team, facilitated missions and support operations during the global war on terror, severe weather events, pandemics, and major training exercises. He contributed to new systems acquisitions and fieldings, as well as facility renovations and new construction projects. Rick led teams managed resources, developed and briefed concepts of operation, facilitated multi-echelon operations, and collaborated with all elements to synchronize training, logistics, and gather feedback to improve future operations support. He coordinated foreign national military engagements to foster and enhance understandings and partnerships. Mr. Parsons stated the highlights of his career were joining the aviation branch when it was only 1 year old. The opportunity to serve his country for 42 years of combined service as a soldier and civilian, and a lifetime of adventure. The fond memories and experience of working with America's best all over the world, not only in peacetime, but also in times of conflict. He cherishes the relationships built, his teams, and the brotherhood forged throughout hardship, as well as fair weather, and hopes to see you all on the high ground in the future. He is very happily married to his beautiful wife, the former Miss Patricia L. Glynn of Killeen, Texas. They have a son, Austin T. Parsons. They currently reside in Enterprise, Alabama. He and his wife have not made specific plans to relocate, but will leave the porch light on for you no matter the LZ. Just call when landing is assured. By direction of the President of the United States, Mr. Parsons is receiving the Meritorious Civilian Service Medal in recognition of 18 years of civilian service at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Mrs. Parsons is receiving a certificate of appreciation signed by the Army Chief of Staff and a rose. Will the family and invited guests of Mr. Parsons please come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Parsons. At this time, will all the retirees please return to the front of the stage? Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. We will now pay tribute to the retirees with the playing of the Old Soldiers Never Die and Auld Lang Syne. We proudly announce Command Sergeant Major Caprina Rivers, First Sergeant Robert Lee Ballard, Master Sergeant Roman Harrell, Sergeant First Class Luis Christian Oropeza, Sergeant First Class Roseanda Evans, Sergeant First Class Pisith Vunn, and Sergeant First Class Bernard Battle will be placed on the retired rolls of the United States Army by order of the United States Army Chief of Staff. Army Civilian Professional Victor A. Estes, Army Civilian Professional Daniel J. Stamaris Jr., Army Civilian Professional Donald Choate, and Army Civilian Professional Rick Parsons are retired from civil service by order of the Commanding General. Ladies and gentlemen, please join in singing Above the Best and the Army Song. At this time, will all spouses return to the front and join their retiree for the receiving line? Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. We would like to extend our greatest appreciation to the Maneuver Center of Excellence Band of Fort Benning, Georgia, for their excellent performance. We extend our sincere gratitude to each of you for your attendance today. Please come forward and congratulate the retirees. Above the best, fly Army.